These images are fresh in the minds of many American voters. News of destructive protests and violent right-wing backlash dominated headlines for much of the summer and early fall. I've been traveling the country and talking to voters, and if there's one thing Americans expect in November, more than a decisive victory for either Joe Biden or Donald Trump, it's violence. That goes for Biden supporters.
With all these different extremist groups and militias, I'm concerned for people's safety.
They're not going to let up peacefully.
As well as Trump supporters.
I think if Biden loses, there will be violence.
There's going to be a civil war.
Yes, I believe we're going to hit the streets. Because we're not going to let it put up with. They're not going to put up with this, man. It's going to be a civil war if we don't do this. I mean, they're sitting there trying to take our guns and trying to do everything. It's not going to happen, man. We're going to stand up for what we believe in. We're going to do the American way.
But is this just talk? Or is the prospect of post-election chaos a legitimate concern?
One of the reasons people are talking about this is because it is happening. The data does show that there has been a rise in the number of terrorist plots and attacks in the U.S. in 2020. About 2/3 of them through the first 8 months were caused by white supremacists and violent far-right extremists, and about 20% by anti-fascists, anarchists, and other violent far left.
But it's not just analysts who are discussing the possibility of disorder in November and beyond. Law enforcement has already begun to prepare.
I've had conversations across state and local law enforcement agencies, federal agencies, FBI, Department of Justice, National Counterterrorism Center. There is concern about the potential for violence, particularly after the election, and also an increase in efforts to try to mitigate those risks by ramping up FBI penetration of some of the groups.
It's not surprising that many Americans are uncertain of how Donald Trump will act if he loses the election. He's been asked that very question and refused to give a clear answer.
Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens.
Is Trump just dodging the possibility that he could very well lose to Joe Biden? Or is he really implying that he would refuse to accept the outcome of the election? When pressed another time on the peaceful transition of power, Trump said that yes, he would allow Biden to take office if he won. But some analysts say that Trump is trying to gain an advantage by casting doubt on mail-in ballots and other common voting practices.
He's basically telling the American people that our electoral system is unreliable. Not simply unreliable, that it's corrupt, that it's been rigged, and that the only way for the system to demonstrate its legitimacy is for him to win. It's an incredibly dangerous state of affairs.
Social media companies like Twitter and Facebook have promised to clamp down on calls for violence after the election. Like the law enforcement agencies, they believe a peaceful transition of power will require all hands on deck.